Okay, today it is still regular polygons. So remember the formula is AP divided by 2. Now in yesterday's assignment on an equilateral triangle, it's got its own formula. Square root of 3 times the side squared divided by 4. And a square, you just go length times width. You can use this, but it's easier to do the other ones. So today we're going to do hexagons and pentagons. On a hexagon, you're either going to be given the side, the apothem, or the radius. One of those three things. Now the hexagons are a lot easier than the pentagons if you know the 30, 60, 90 rules. To find this area, we got to take the apothem, which we don't know, times the perimeter, which we do know, because if it's 10, 60 divided by 2. So all you got to do is find the apothem and plug it in there. So when you draw it in, remember an apothem goes from the center to an edge at a 90. And then if you draw this in, that forms a 30, 60, 90. On a hexagon, hexagons and equilateral triangles are the only ones that have the 30, 60, 90. The reason is because every angle in a hexagon, a regular hexagon, is 120, so that means that's 60, so that's why it's a 30, 60, 90. So, yep, this would be 5, and the apothem would be 5 squared to 3. That's why it's so important to know these rules. If you didn't know that, you would have to use a sine, cosine, or tangent to figure that out. So, you just got to plug that in there. So 5 squared to 3 times 60 divided by 2. And again, these you can just round to the nearest tenth. 259.8 units squared. If they give you the apothem, then in the formula, AP divided by 2, you know what A is, but we don't know the perimeter, so you got to figure that out. So again, if you draw this in, and this is only on the hexagon, you got a right triangle and you know the long leg. So if you know the long leg, this is the harder one to remember of this. What's it? Right. So that means the whole side then is 16 squared to 3 divided by 3, because we just found that, so you got to double it to find the whole side. So 6 of those, you just take that times 6. So all the way around, it would be 96 squared to 3 divided by 3. Now everyone understand where I got the 96 from? Because 16, 16, 16, 16, 16, 16 is 96 squared to 3 over 3. So, putting this in a calculator, you can just go 8 times 96 times the square root of 3 divided by 3, press equals, and then divide by 2. Now, if you write it down, you can do some simplifying to make it easier on yourself. 8 over 2 is 4. Then it saves you a step of dividing. If this is an even number, like here, all I did is I just made that 30, and that just saves you a step.
Wait, so we can type it in 8 times 96 equals divided by 2 plus times the square root of 3 equals divided by 2.
Try it and see what you get. You should get 221.7. Is that what you got?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So then the third type is where they give you the radius of the hexagon. So again, we don't know either of them now. AP divided by 2, but since it's a hexagon, this forms a 30, 60, 90. So the radius, which is the hypotenuse, is 10, which means this is 5. And this is 5 squared, it's a 3. So it's exactly the same thing as this one. So the apothem is 5 squared, it's a 3. The perimeter, since that's 5, the whole side is 10, which makes it 60 all around. So you end up getting the same answer as that one. Now, this is what's so nice about hexagons. Whatever the radius is, the sides will end up being the same. The reason why is, if we just drew in 2 radiuses like that, and that's 60, that's 60, that's 60, it's equilateral, which means all of them are the same length also. So if you know the radius, the side's the same. If you know the side, the radius is the same on the hexagons. Now, the pentagons are a little bit tougher. So for these, you want to know the 30, 60, 90 rules. For the pentagons, you got to use sine, cosine, tangent. So once again, you're either going to be given the length of a side, or you're going to be given the apothem, or you're going to be given a radius. So you got to use the same formula. AP divided by 2. We know the perimeter. Each side is 10, and it's 5 sides, so that makes 50. But we got to figure out the apothem. So when you draw it in there, well, that's a point. Apothem is from the center to an edge, and then when you draw it like that, it doesn't form a 30, 60, 90. Because in a pentagon, there's 5 angles, so you take 3 times 180. Remember, it's the number of sides minus 2. And you get 540. So when you divide by 5, I think it's 108. Yep, each angle is 108, which means this makes a 54 degree right there. So it's not a special triangle. So the only way we can figure out this side is to use sine, cosine, or tangent. Now, since this is 10, this would be 5. So, in order to figure this out, would you use sine, cosine, or tangent?
Let me think.
Tangent, because x is opposite and 5 is adjacent. So the tangent of 54 equals opposite x over adjacent. So to get x by itself, you take it times 5, times 5. Again, you got to make sure your calculator's on degrees now. And it would round to 6.9. Now, to get a more accurate answer, once you find that, don't just leave it. Don't round it. It's 6.881909602. So just leave it on there, because to find that area, you got to take the apothem times perimeter divided by 2. What I have on the calculator right now is the exact apothem.
Oh.
Okay, so that's why you don't need to round it. Just leave that number on there. Take it times the perimeter, which would be 50,
Okay.
and then divide by 2, and you'll get 172. Now, if you put the rounded number in, it won't be wrong. We just got to adjust for it when we correct. If I would have put in 6.9, it's going to be close. 172.5. So it's off by a half a unit, which is a considerable amount, but it wouldn't be wrong if you use your rounded number. Okay? So for this one, we do know the apothem, but we don't know the perimeter. So what we got to do is draw on a triangle, and again, since it's a pentagon, it's going to be 54, and we got to find that. So we got to do the same exact thing. We're going to have to use tangent again to find x. Tangent of 54, the degrees, equals opposite over x. Now remember, what do you do when the x is on the bottom?
Switch them.
Yep, they just end up swapping spots. So x is going to equal 8 divided by the tangent of 54. And you get 5.8. Now again, if you just leave that number on there, you can figure out the perimeter without rounding it, because we got to double it to find, so take it times 2, right?
Yeah.
And then take that times 5. And you have your perimeter right on there, so just leave it on there. So then just take that times the apothem and divide by 2, and you'd get 232.5. Now, if you kept the rounded number, again, it wouldn't be incorrect, it's just going to be a little off. If I kept that at 5.8, that means I'd have 11.6 for each side, and then take that times 5. So there's the perimeter, take that times 8, and then divide by 2, I would have got just 232. That's odd, they're both off by half. So they're both correct, it's just here we used the rounded number, here we did not. So the third type is they give you the radius. So we don't know either of them. So you got to draw a right triangle. We know that's 54. So we got to find both of these now. Doesn't matter which one you find. I'll just find this one. If you're finding that one, sign, because x is opposite and 12 is the hypotenuse. So, to get the x by itself, it's times 12. And it's 9.7. Now, you could do another trig function, but what's the easier way to find the third? Pythagorean theorem. So since it's a leg you're looking for, you'd have to square them and subtract them. You'd have to take 12 squared minus 9.7 squared and square root it. And it's 7.1. So again, if you want to be more accurate, you don't have to write this down, clear your calculator, and then you can just keep this number on there, 7.0647 and so on. Double it to find one side, and then take it times 5 to get the perimeter. So that turns out to be 70.64. Again, just leave it on there. And then take it times, because right now I have this number on my calculator. Take it times the apothem, and then divide by 2. So that'd be 342.6. Now that's not real accurate because we did round this number too. You didn't get that?
I rounded the 7.1 and I rounded the 9.7 and I got 344.6.
Okay, that's probably right. So if you round it, since there's two rounded numbers, so double 7.1 and then take it times 5 and then times the apothem divided by 2. Yep, you do get 344.35, so 0.4. So that would be correct. you can see the bigger the numbers are, the more they're gonna be apart. This is the more accurate answer, but that one we did correctly too, so. Okay,